What if the parts of you that you've been hiding are the keys to your own power? Shadows are disowned aspects of ourselves and can include fears, unresolved traumas, suppressed desires, anger, jealousy, and greed. Shadow work is about remembering what you disown and returning whole as your true self. This is sacred reclamation. Owning and loving every aspect of yourself is a path to wholeness. It can change everything: relationships, money, and peace of mind. Your shadow is exiled truth, and to welcome it home is a radical act of self love. This is shadow work. Stay tuned with me because in just a few minutes, I'll share some of our practical tools so that you can start shadow work today. Carl Jung mapped the terrain of the psyche and the soul. He said that we're more than who we think we are. There's an outer facing aspect, and that's the mask that we all wear, also known as the persona. This is the social face that we put on, a protective mechanism so that the deeper psyche is safe from overwhelm by the outside world. And if it's too heavily represented, if we misidentify with the mask as our true selves, this leads to inauthenticity. We're also conscious choices, aka the ego. This is the internal sense of I that mediates decisions and maintains a continual sense of identity. Beneath these layers, we're much more than our conscious choices, and if we over-identify with the ego, this results in a blindness to our depths. Part of that hidden depth includes the exiled, also known as the shadow. This is everything that we've repressed and refused to identify with. It includes both disowned negative traits and unlived positive traits. They appear in daydreams, projections, triggers, and often in the mirrors that our relationships can be. Without acknowledgement, the shadow has a way of controlling us from beneath our awareness. It can lead to outbursts, anxiety, cravings, judgment, and avoidance. In our entirety, that is, inclusive of our persona, ego, and shadows, we are the self, a composite of our conscious and our unconscious together. And when we feel that we are being guided by something greater, that is the self. In Jung's words, the self is our life's goal, for it's the completest expression of that fateful combination that we call individuality. The self is the full being that we're becoming through this journey of life. And there are also archetypes. These are universal characters and patterns that are part of the collective unconscious, finding an expression through us. And they're more than fiction. They're living myths within our psyche and within the collective. There's a general consensus regarding the ways that a king, witch, lover, and maiden act. They each have an integrated expression and a shadow expression. And as we integrate these, our masks dissolve and we live a more soulful expression. Essentially, our shadows and egos hold polarity. By accepting them both, though, we unlock the paradox of ourselves. This process is one of dissolving patterns. It leads to increasing our ability to choose how we respond in life, and as a result, we become more present. And when we do this for ourselves, we do this for each other. The archetypes, they evolve through us and they shift the collective. The sovereign who regularly showed up as a tyrant in collective stories then became a leader focused on building an empire. Now, some integrated sovereigns are represented by benevolent legacy building. This is evolution on both a personal and a collective level, and our world still has expressions of this archetype in tyrant form all the way through to benevolent legacy builder. If you want to dive deeper, we break down the 4 core archetypes in our content library, and we'll continue to do so with short and long form content. Make sure to read the descriptions in our short form content, especially the animated ones. we've managed to pack in a lot of extra information and ritual processes. I especially recommend exploring the deity reels. They are some of our deepest rituals in there for you to explore. And make sure to comment on pieces you like in such a way that I can make more content that helps you. Let's see if I can keep up with my content plan and your requests. Let's explore how shadow forms. As children, we adapted to survive, learning to display what was praised and to banish what was shamed. Essentially, our environment played a major role in shaping us. Some families rewarded silence, and others punished softness. The abandoned parts, if they were raw anger, radiant sexuality, deep grief, they still exist, potentially leaking out as depression, numbness, or reactivity, and otherwise overexpressing through a constant drive to prove ourselves. All of our disowned parts are waiting to be remembered and to be integrated. And once we do this, we have a greater range of expression and a sense of internal peace. From this place, we're more responsive and more response able in our environments, and as such, we let go of reactive and destructive behaviors. This is because there's less repressed within that's looking to express outwardly. Suppression of our expression can lead to depression and outbursts of overexpression. By owning all of our parts, we're choosing to be truly alive. We're all capable of softness that supports and that's of service to others, just as we're all capable of strength that leads and that allows us to take and receive what's in our interests. What I've just touched on is the polarity of giving and receiving, the polarity of light, which gives, and dark, which receives. This is different to good and bad. There are heartful expressions of this polarity of dark and light, and there are antisocial choices that can come from pain and a lack of integration. Anger without heart is destruction. Anger with heart becomes willpower, the force that pushes us through resistance and procrastination. We may have been a rebel that was angry with a situation, and instead become a leader with anger and heart integrated, expressing together as the will to land a solution. Sexuality in shadow is manipulation, while sexuality integrated is creative fire, our inner radiance that inspires art and intimacy. Whilst grief in shadow is paralysis, and grief integrated becomes compassion, the bridge of the heart. Shadows are our exiled allies, and to own our shadows is to choose life. If this resonates, hit like so more people can see this message while we get to keep going deeper. Another important topic is how shadow speaks in symbols. The unconscious speaks in symbols. It sends dreams, compulsions, myths, and metaphors. Learning to speak its language allows us to interpret coded patterns that otherwise may have appeared as the enemy. We get to integrate the aspects of ourselves that we disowned. Judging a narcissist can come from one's own unmet longing for validation, just as chasing a seducer can arise as a result of disowned magnetism. Symbolic literacy turns suffering into guidance. Instead of an enemy, we meet messengers. Instead of judgment, we find compassion. And as we refine our capacity to unravel familial, cultural, and personal conditioning from our unconscious and our subconscious, we get to live more of our day in present awareness and authentic expression. This continued commitment is shadow work. Relationships can be our sharpest mirrors. The people who have triggered us to experience emotions such as envy, disgust, and rage, they often show us what we've denied internally, and we can use that as an opportunity to own these aspects. When I've repressed aggression, then I've projected it onto others, and suddenly I've felt that everybody else was too much to be around. When I've denied tenderness, I more easily projected my self-judgment onto others and considered them to be weak. Doing shadow work, we learn to use separation from love as a clue and as an opportunity to witness our soul reflected. Repression fuels projection, and projection hides power. And so to integrate is to reclaim our power. Boundaries come when we own our fire, and community comes when we own our care. Shadow work is relationship work, and the ruptures that we feel are portals to our inner worlds. When our hearts are fully open, we have the compassion for everyone, and this is an ability to imagine pain that created a maladapted behavior in another and to still care. This love is transformative. We can bring compassion to people in our lives, people in stories, in movies, and in history. Even history's darkest figures hold lessons. For instance, Hitler showed some of the shadows of power, and he caused immense pain. Ask yourself how that makes you feel, and ask yourself if you're afraid of your own power. Integration of power is different to excusing Hitler. It's reclaiming what was misused. Instead of being separated from our power, we can channel it into something worthy, something that helps us all, and even the planet, for instance. I'll go super deep into that in some future videos. For now, know that while shadow work in relationships can be painful, it's also holy. Every rupture is a portal to wholeness. And just as shadows healed in interpersonal relationships can bear fruit, shadows on a more meta scale, such as between nations or between, say, man and nature, can have grand ramifications also. Every archetype has integrated and shadow expressions. Archetypes are patterns of our psyche, character types as symbols that echo through cultures. They carry maps of behavior, and they help our understanding of inner and outer worlds. The dark masculine is the sovereign. When unintegrated, they become the predator. That's power without presence, control without care, a tyrant masking their behavior as strength and destroying mutuality. And the dark masculine can also have the opposite shadow. They can lack drive, having grand plans and essentially being all talk and no action. The dark feminine is the alluring witch or wizard in flow. When ungrounded, they become the seductress, chaotic, starving for devotion and unable to hold it. Potentially they were objectified before developing boundaries or agency. They became hyper-aware of their effect, and so learnt to control connection with allure, withholding and withdrawing to test others. The dark and shadow is known to gaslight, to project, and to take more than their share. They allow others to overgive and to over-surrender. It's common for them to weaponize vulnerability and for them to weaponize confusion to destabilize others, playing the victim as a control tactic so that others overextend. In contrast, the light overgives, they over-moralize, they shun their truth to build peace through love that cannot be sustained. And they have to learn to love themselves first, including their darkness in their inner equation of self. That way they're aligned, fully expressed, and empowered. The light masculine, this is the lover, the poet, also the wise and devout one. When distorted, they become a false lover, a false prophet, over-intellectualized, with no soul. Their behavior includes covert contracts and people-pleasing, which looks like giving to get, but it misses the conversation that expresses expectations. And the light feminine is supportive, a mother, a maiden, a cheerleader, a squire, a warrior. In shadow, they fawn, they give everything to avoid abandonment, and they become depleted in the process. This is anxious attachment dressed as devotion, and once their over-supportiveness has been taken advantage of, they become a victim. When reclaimed, these archetypal energies transform from shadow into soul. The mythic has practical applications. We've grown in a culture of stories that frame our perception of reality. Our personal stories and our collective myths, they're all evolving. Just as the first Disney princesses were damsels needing to be saved, now females in Disney are representing as sovereign, empowered, and they're completing themselves. We too have an opportunity to grow, to become greater expressions of ourselves, to rewrite our own myths, and to live them. Some healing is cozy, and some is confrontational, especially shadow work. It's calling out the manipulator in our own psyche with love and with truth. It's standing eye to eye with our own victim identity and saying no more. It's facing the addict inside and choosing a new behavior. Without truth, love can become enabling, and without love, power can become tyranny. Shadow work asks us to weave truth, love, and power. It's powerful to become comfortable with internal confrontation, facing the addict inside. Shadow work is saying goodbye to bypassing, to be ignoring, repressing, judging, projecting, or silencing is to be being caught up in trauma strategies. Sure, they kept us safe, and that perceived safety has had a cost. Tensions created in the body, stuck emotions, and this results in patterns that can loop on repeat. Trauma is information that's waiting for integration. Maybe you've had an information overload in the past and so resorted to a trauma strategy. In the moment of the overload, you may have had a trauma response, and that would look like entering a nervous system state of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn with an effort to protect yourself. The information, it got stuck, and that's where the pattern emerged to keep you safe. And it then formed a comfortable habit, which has likely kept the information in its place, ignored, repressed, judged, and silenced. A deer in the woods, after being confronted with headlights, will exhibit a physiological tremor, and then they'll move on, present again in the moment, having literally shaken the experience off. Suppressed emotion creates tension in the body, and the issue stays in the tissues. Emotion is energy in motion, and energy wants to move. With shadow work, we learn to listen where we ignored, to feel what we repressed. We forgive what we judged, and we reclaim what we projected. Shadow work is a practice of integration, fierce love in action. Comment below, what shadow are you ready to face with fierce love? Know that sharing makes the work real. So how do we begin? Well, we've got two entry points for shadow work. We've got top down and bottom up. Top down begins in the mind. We track a trigger, a behavior, or a pattern, and we ask, what am I avoiding? What does this part protect me from? And then we listen, and we can dialogue with our shadow like it's an old friend. Sometimes it may have a rational voice to respond with, and other times it may be emotional. Either way, our listening lets the voice be heard, and it helps us to build a relationship with the disowned aspects. We can find aspects to address in many different ways. This can be done by tracking old behaviors from an awareness that's arisen in the moment. And we've also got prompts in our archetypal transformational programs that can bring up suppressed memories. If we start in the mind, the top, and then move to the body, the bottom, it's useful to explore breath, sound, and physical movement techniques. These can help us to move what's been stuck. When a trauma has occurred, when a nervous system shift has taken place, often our body held on to something, and we can become aware of this with mind-based exploration. To shift the tension from the body, we use breath, sound, and physical movement techniques. This is still a top-down approach as we maintain intention and directionality from the mind. Then, the bottom-up approach. It begins in the body, and it still involves the same body-based exercises. We feel for the tension, and we let it release without needing to know anything, and this can create natural tremors and shaking in our body. It can be through holding physical postures that we do this, through doing breath work, and natural sound-making techniques. These let the body release what the mind is as of yet unable to name. And we share these techniques in our programs, and we'll touch on them further in other videos, so stay tuned. If there's anything in particular that you want me to concentrate on in follow-up videos, then please make sure to comment what it is you'd like to know more about. When doing the breath, body, and sound practices, you may find yourself crying in a ball, rocking backwards and forth, raging into a pillow, massaging your heart, and whispering your truth to yourself. We let emotions arise, completely letting go of any intention to fix them. We fill ourselves with the openness to feel and to accept. This is emotional alchemy. This is facing ourselves and what's been stuck. That way we can allow it to flow. As this becomes normal again, as we become whole, we remember our innocence, and our inner child arrives with joy. We can express, present in the moment, instead of storing emotions to be processed later. If we're doing top-down, so that's cognitive first, maybe we've identified avoidance of important tasks by scrolling endlessly on our phone, or an addiction of eating to avoid an emotion, or lashing out in arguments instead of facing and expressing an underlying truth. All of these can sabotage our relationships and our goals. Maybe we're aware of the truth and maybe not. If not, using the statements from our transformational programs in the top-down approach has the capacity to create a powerful experience. If I work with the light masculine archetype, I may work through a series of statements geared towards that archetype. I could say to myself, I'm sorry that you compromised your truth. And that may bring discomfort up in my body, a feeling of ick. If that happens, then that's a clue to either ask further questions or to go straight to the bottom, the body-based exercises until I can say the statement in such a way that it's neutral. Let's say that we're staying with a top-down approach. After identifying a neglected part, we can invite it in, dialoguing with it like it's an old friend, asking it questions like, what do you protect me from? What do you need? And we do our best in this to be kind, to stay free of judgment and of expectations. Also remembering that this is an open-ended dialogue where we maintain curiosity and respect. We're building a relationship with aspects of ourselves that may have felt unseen for a long time. So it could take a few visits to build comfort on both sides of this internal conversation. Whether we do top-down or bottom-up, it's always important to integrate, to find a way to reinforce our realization in the world. And this can be with a new behavior, an upgraded way of interacting in a dynamic. And it can also be very powerful to journal what came up. These are all valid expressions of integration. When we journal, we can set intentions for new ways of being. Journaling's great. We can come back to something that we've previously worked on, and we can do a self-audit as a result. Top and bottom approaches alternatively. Now that is, to me, a great path to complete integration. And seeing the change in our behavior, well, that's our shadow work working. Shadow work is more than one breakthrough. This is about shifting our frequency, and it's important to maintain frequency in our practice of self-dialogue and self-auditing. By doing this, our integrity grows and our capacity, it expands. This is about having a deep relationship within ourselves. As we build consistency with this practice, our self-awareness of what tools work for specific emotions, it grows, as does the sensitivity of our bodies. This can be made easier to track for some people through consistent journaling. Let's look at how to reframe toxic traits as power. Pop psychology labels narcissism, impulsivity, and disagreeableness as toxic traits. But what if they're actually raw power, waiting to be tempered and refined? Perception of them as evil can be reversed. The word evil itself, when reversed, is live, and these are powerful forces for our lives when owned. So let's look at narcissism, impulsivity, and disagreeableness. Narcissism looks like self-obsession, entitlement, vanity, and hunger for validation. When made conscious, it becomes vision, the ability to see one's destiny clearly and to lead from authentic inspiration. Empathy tempers narcissism by turning the gaze outward. You still see yourself as radiant, and you also recognize that every other being is equally divine. Balance between both polarities is deeply important. The dark trait of narcissism balanced with the light trait of empathy. Empathy on its own is out of balance. Empathy can be an emotional pathology, and it can express as emotionally pathetic behavior. With both traits balanced, empathy and narcissism, true leadership arises. Confidence is no longer isolating, it illuminates with care for others as well as the self. Narcissism, when integrated, is the artist's devotion to their craft, the visionary's conviction to their path, and the soul's reverent recognition that I'm a spark of the divine and so are you. Now let's look at impulsivity. It becomes bold leadership when grounded in wisdom. When raw life force, impulsivity, is tempered by wisdom, which is knowledge and experience together, we then get courage that's informed by intuition. Okay, let's look at disagreeableness. It's the refusal to conform and also the will to assert boundaries. In shadow, it can be hostile and used to control and to isolate. And when integrated, it becomes protection, especially when it's softened with care. It's the kind of protection that guards the heart and that also defends the vulnerable. Care sanctifies boundaries. It turns the sword of defiance into the staff of discernment. It allows us to say no from love instead of from anger. It's a love that values truth and safety for all those who are involved. Integration is inclusive of all parts of ourselves. What's been demonized within is often a source of our greatest life force. The more that we balance polarities by inhabiting both, freeing ourselves from a perception that we have to be a specific way, the more energy that we have available to be present and responsive within the moment and in multiple environments. This way of being lets our souls take the reins so that our soul's true purposes can be easily and effortlessly fulfilled. Let's have a shallow dive into a map of archetypes and where they fit in our psyche. Picture our psyche as having concentric circles and also a vertical and a horizontal line, both going through the center of the circles. We have an outer ring, and that's the shadow. As we discussed, that's the disowned aspects of ourselves, everything that we repressed and refused to identify with. The shadow, it includes both negative and positive traits. Deeper in is the persona and our ego together. Remember, the persona is our social face that we put on. It keeps our deeper psyche safe, and if it's too heavily represented, we're then inauthentic as we misidentified with the mask as if it was our true selves. This internal sense of I is the ego. It mediates decisions. It's the idea that we have of ourselves. Over-identifying with it means blindness to our depths. Our stories, the pieces of our past that we cling to, these are most heavily represented in these first two outer layers, the shadow and the persona. And then deeper still, this is where our soul sits. This is us in our entirety. It's a holy trinity of psychology. The soul is the part of our psyche that includes the personal bits that we're conscious of, the personal bits that we're unconscious of, and also the deeper layers of our collective unconscious. That part of the trifecta, the collective unconscious, is a deep universal layer that we all share, and it's populated by primordial images. We call these archetypes. We have 4 core archetypes, and these are represented by the 4 quadrants on the map. Then at the center of this map is presence, and that's our philosopher's stone, the grail, the void, the 0 point. The more that we dissolve shadows and persona, the more that we live soulfully from our archetypes. The more that we learn to shift archetypes depending on the moment, the deeper we go into the center of the map. Any one of these layers is going to be controlling how we show up in life, and it can shift moment by moment. Something in our environment may bring us out of presence with the moment and into shadow. It could be because we're triggered by something that we saw, just some symbol that reminds us of a past occurrence, likely tied to an old emotion that never got to resolve. We may also know ourselves well enough that we're strong in our persona, and if so, it becomes more rare to stray into the shadow as we have an integrated identity. It's also possible to move through life entirely from the layer of archetypes. Life is very transpersonal at this level, super mystical. You have missions, you could hear voices, feel guided by God or the world's soul. Your intuition or shamanic senses may be active. This is the realm of archetypes completing soul contracts, and it can feel like one is doing the work to shift the collective from here. And that said, if there's a pride for doing this work, or judgment of others whilst perceiving oneself as being above them, then I suggest stepping back and observing and questioning if this is a shadow expression. Each quadrant on the map is a different archetype, and so each archetype has its own persona and shadow traits. When we learn the nuances of this map, this matrix of ideas and expressions, we have the opportunity to identify how we can grow closer to our center, the center that we have of pure presence. Even though the map is continually shifting, we can master this matrix of sorts by becoming better at shifting ourselves. Holding on to our past can keep us out of presence and in shadow. Holding on to a persona is very much the same thing. If I won't shift quadrants to another archetypal expression as a moment calls for, it's generally because of an internal identification. I'm the sovereign, the leader. I won't surrender. It's not my role to be the supportive one. This can be a persona, though a true sovereign, one that's integrated, is really quite balanced and able to shift. What I'm getting at is that our stories can distort us. They can keep us in shadow and in persona, in the past. Regardless of them being good or bad stories, they feed us, and so we go back. And they're parasitic to our presence of being in the moment. They can be addictive, mostly because of emotional loops and patterns. Extreme highs and lows have a way of disabling us. They age us, and our persona is built on the stories that we've lived and still associate with. This is how an identity is created. Our stories with overly high or low emotions attached are filters of our perception. Extreme emotions destabilize our pH levels, which causes oxidization and aging. Freedom from stories means that we're more easily present in the moment and that we live in wonder. Stories sit in the outer ring of shadow and a little bit deeper in persona as well. To step beyond these paths and to live in wonder, this allows us to access the elixir of youth. Wonder is an elixir of youth. Actual awe is the most alive and present state that I'm aware of. That's as many of our senses engaged, perceiving, and experiencing as much as we can have access to. Awe is the alchemy of the moment. It keeps us alive, present, and whole. When we let go of process and we transmute the persona, we become present in the moment, expressing from our soul through the center of our being. This is truth in beingness. Integrated is a new way for us to live. This work asks you to listen to what you've ignored, to feel what you've repressed, and to forgive what you've judged. You get to reclaim what you've projected and to speak what you've silenced. In doing so, you get to live. Integration is about continual perfecting and solidifying each change. By placing oneself under so much pressure that, like coal, we become a diamond. The diamond, it's an unbreakable breaker, an uncuttable cutter. It's shiny enough to trigger others, and it's strong enough to hold itself whole. It's also compassionate enough to stay true without bending. So let's drop the fear of being cut down and be our tallest selves. Show others how beautifully and tall we can grow. This is shadow work. The more that we do this shadow work, the more that we take ourselves out of the outer circles that I described earlier, the ones that cause our pH levels to change. When our pH levels change, our bodies can become more acidic. And the more acidic our bodies become, the more oxidization that we have inside our cells. And the more oxidization that we have in our cells, the quicker that we age. This is why the fountain of youth, the philosopher's stone, is in the center of the map and in the center of our beings. Beyond the projections, the shadows of the persona, deeper still than where the soul is, it's in our capacity to be present in the moment, to be accepting of any energy that arises, and to be expressing this energy cleanly through our archetypes. When we do this, we channel from the void, the 0 point, and this shifts the collective. It raises everyone's consciousness. To be accepting of any energy that arises, this is the third side of the coin. On one side there's pain, on another side there's pleasure, and on the rim is acceptance. And we have the choice whether we can accept pleasure or pain. Pain and pleasure release the same chemicals. The same neurochemistry is going on in our brains. It's a matter of our stories to how we interpret what's going on in the moment. It's a matter of our centeredness to how much we can sit in intensity without judgment, without anger, without pain, and even without pleasure. To be able to do so, to be able to stay centered, to be able to keep our pH at a healthy level and to subvert oxidization in the body. This is what I believe personally to be a path to true immortality. Follow me to stay tuned, and I'll help you to tune yourself. This channel is devoted to creating clear channels in you, and it's a part of my process in becoming the clearest channel that I can be. The intention is to deprogram and reprogram us for health and for consciousness. Let me know what else it is that you want me to explore.